By the age of 26, Jordan Belfort was earning $50 million a year, roughly $1 million a week, and he had never once made a single honest trade. His brokerage firm, Stratton Oakmont, employed over 1,000 salespeople, operated out of a converted car dealership on Long Island, and was robbing ordinary American families blind before they'd even finish their morning coffee. His staff snorted cocaine off their desks. He bought a yacht so large it had its own helicopter. He paid employees cash bonuses on Friday afternoons like a mob boss handing out envelopes. But here's the part that never made it into the movie. The people he stole from weren't hedge funds or Wall Street giants. They were electricians, nurses, retired teachers, and small business owners who just wanted a piece of the market. This is the story of Jordan Belfort, the man who turned a telephone, a suit, and zero conscience into the most profitable fraud machine in American history. August 1987. Jordan Belfort arrives in New York City as a 22-year-old from the Bronx with a business degree, a big mouth, and the unshakable belief that he was destined to be rich. He lands a trainee position at a prestigious Manhattan brokerage, the kind of firm with marble lobbies and partners who wore their watches on the inside of their wrists. His first day on the job, a senior broker takes him to lunch, orders a $400 bottle of wine at noon on a Tuesday, and explains the only rule that matters on Wall Street: the money moves or you do. Belfort had never heard anything more beautiful in his life. Then, 2 months later, Black Monday happened. October 19th, 1987. The Dow Jones drops 22% in a single session, the largest single-day percentage crash in stock market history. Belfort's firm, like hundreds of others, implodes overnight. He is out of a job before he has 30 days in. Most people in that situation go home, reconsider their career choices, maybe take the LSATs. Jordan Belfort drove to Long Island. Out in a strip mall, he stumbled onto something that changed everything: penny stocks. These are shares in tiny, obscure companies, usually worth less than $5 per share, often worth almost nothing at all, that traded outside the major exchanges in a regulatory wilderness that the SEC barely patrolled. The big Wall Street firms ignored them. The institutional money wanted nothing to do with them, and the commission rate for selling them wasn't the standard 1% you'd earn on a normal stock. It was 50%. For every dollar of penny stock you moved, you kept 50 cents. Belfort picked up the phone. He started selling. Within months, he had made his first million. What he had discovered wasn't a loophole exactly. It was a canyon-sized gap in how financial markets worked. If you could quietly accumulate shares in a worthless company, hype it up convincingly enough, sell it to enough people, and dump your own position before the price collapsed, you could extract almost unlimited money from the market with almost zero accountability. The concept wasn't complicated. The concept was theft, dressed up in a Windsor knot. In 1989, Belfort founded Stratton Oakmont and turned this discovery into an industrial operation. The business model, stripped to its bones, worked like this. Stratton would quietly accumulate large amounts of shares in a small, cheap company, sometimes a company they effectively controlled, before anyone else knew to care about it. Then they'd unleash the sales force. Hundreds of brokers, most of them in their early 20s with no formal financial training, would cold call lists of middle-class Americans. Dentists in Ohio, retired cops in New Jersey, small business owners in Florida, and deliver the same pitch. This stock is about to explode. We have information you don't have, and you need to move right now before the window closes. The script was rehearsed, pressure-tested, and refined like a military drill. The salespeople didn't know they were committing fraud. They thought they were closing deals. That distinction would matter a great deal later. As the calls went out, the stock price rose because Stratton controlled enough of the supply to move it artificially. And as it rose, early investors called their friends. Their friends called their brothers-in-law. The price climbed higher. Everyone felt like a genius. Then, quietly, Belfort and his inner circle sold all of their shares at the peak, and the price collapsed like a building with its foundation pulled out. The people still holding the stock lost everything. The people who'd moved it walked away rich. By the mid-1990s, Stratton Oakmont had handled over 35 initial public offerings and generated hundreds of millions of dollars. Belfort was earning, by his own account, roughly $3 million a month. He purchased a 170-foot yacht originally built for Coco Chanel. He maintained a fleet of luxury cars, a private helicopter, and a house in the Hamptons, large enough to require its own maintenance staff. He threw parties at the office that would have made Roman emperors genuinely uncomfortable. Dwarfs were tossed, a chimpanzee appeared as office mascot on a particularly successful Friday, and the drug budget for a single afternoon reportedly exceeded what most Stratton employees had earned in their entire lives before working there. NVIDIA's CEO once started wearing leather jackets to conferences, and the press called him a rock star. Belfort was doing lines off a stock ticker and calling it strategy. He had convinced himself and more impressively convinced 1,000 other people that the entire operation was simply aggressive salesmanship, that the line between selling hard and stealing was a matter of perspective. But beneath the spectacle, the machine had a structural flaw that no amount of cocaine or confidence could fix. It only worked if nobody ever looked closely enough to ask where the money was actually coming from. Then somebody did. The FBI had been watching Stratton Oakmont since 1992. At first, it was a whisper, a pattern noticed by a junior agent in the New York field office, a stack of investor complaints that didn't look like coincidences. But the complaints multiplied. Ordinary people who'd been promised life-changing returns were calling regulators, confused and broke, describing a broker who had pressured them into buying a stock that had since become worthless. By 1996, the investigation had teeth. Stratton Oakmont was shut down by regulators, not with a dramatic raid, but with a quiet revocation of its brokerage license. The party simply stopped. The building emptied out. The phones went silent. In 1998, Belfort was indicted on charges of securities fraud and money laundering. His response was to cooperate, fully, aggressively, and strategically. He gave the FBI names, dates, account numbers, wire transfers, the whole architecture. He helped build cases against dozens of his former associates. In exchange, his sentence was reduced to 22 months in a minimum security facility in California. He served 22 months for stealing, by conservative estimate, over $200 million. But here's who didn't receive a deal. A retired schoolteacher from New Jersey had invested her late husband's life insurance payout into a Stratton-recommended stock after her broker told her it was the safest bet she'd ever see. She lost $80,000. She never recovered it. Thousands of others exactly like her. Not institutional investors, not sophisticated traders, but people who had simply answered the phone at the wrong moment, had their savings wiped clean by a script written in a converted car dealership on Long Island. The average victim lost around $100,000. Many lost more. Some lost everything they had built over a lifetime. After prison, Jordan Belfort reinvented himself as a motivational speaker. He wrote a memoir, sold the film rights to Martin Scorsese, watched Leonardo DiCaprio play him in a movie that grossed $392 million worldwide, and spent the following 2 decades charging corporations $10,000 a head to teach their sales teams the art of persuasion. The same persuasion he'd used to steal from their customers' parents. He is, by most accounts, still not fully paid up on the $110 million in restitution. A court ordered him to return to his victims. Here's what the Wolf of Wall Street story actually is. Underneath the sports cars and the celebrity cameos and the retrospective glamour, it's a story about what happens when you build a machine that extracts value from trust. Belfort didn't invent a product, a service, or anything that made a single person's life measurably better. He invented a system for converting other people's hope into his own net worth, and he was so fluent in the language of ambition and urgency and the fear of missing out that he turned that system into a company with 1,000 employees and a name that sounded like a bank. The tragedy isn't that a charismatic con man got rich. Charismatic con men have always gotten rich. That story is as old as money itself. The tragedy is that the machine he built was powered entirely by ordinary people who just wanted to believe that this time, the person on the other end of the phone was actually telling the truth. By the age of 26, Jordan Belfort was earning $50 million a year. He had never once made a single honest trade.